Stroma gets its name from the Norse word Stromi, meaning island in the stream, and that's because Stroma is in the middle of the Pentland Firth, a very fast-flowing stretch of tidal water that joins the Atlantic Ocean in the west to the North Sea in the east. You can see the houses on the island. In fact, there are 74 houses in total, but Stroma Island is uninhabited and has been for a long time.
Well, I was born in Stroma, in a typical Queen's Croft house where you're built in Bain and your closet. I mean, we were comfortable enough. We had gas light, a gas cooker, gas boiler for our clothes. My father put 2 big tanks for water at the back and piped in water, so we piped in water, but we still had to get our drinking water from a well. We had sheep, we had 1 cow, we had a horse, and we usually had a dog, several cats and several hens. And my father had a Larry. He was the gas representative for the island for Colour Gas. Crofter fisherman, he had a boat. We lived quite well on lobster and crab, and of course all the vegetables that you can grow yourself.
There was one occasion when we had been storm-bound for over a month and Christmas was coming out along and the Christmas treat. My mother had her outfit, but the only thing that she didn't have was a pair of shoes. So my father thought he could march to his friend John O'Groats and ask him to deliver a message to his cousin who lived here in Wick and to send my mum a pair of brown Cuban-heeled shoes. The thing he didn't do was tell what size of shoe my mother needed. Duly 2 days before the Christmas treat, the box with the requested shoes arrived, but unfortunately they were a size 5. Mum only had a size 3. However, not to be done, my father found an answer to everything. My granny used to talk about innovation and what we did in cases of emergency. So what my father did was he put these shoes on a last, because every home had a last, because people did their own cobbling, and he tied it on securely with a string, and he boiled the shoes. He boiled them. And hey presto, they reduced in size, and my mother could get her foot into it quite comfortably. And on the night of the Christmas treat, I remember my mum saying, well, you know, I don't think there'll be anybody there tonight with a pair of boiled shoes on their feet. And Dad said, no, I don't think so, not even in Great Britain, never mind Stroma.
We had a telephone in Stroma, a kiosk, and they had one at the post office. It was called John O'Groats 1. And they changed that number to John O'Groats 214. It was something else when you could speak to the mainland, you know. There was 4 shops on Stroma at one time, and the floating shops came from Orkney. They came to the north end of the island one week and the south end the next week. And they'd anchor up there and the people went out and sold their lobsters and salt fish and anything they could, eggs, anything they could barter for groceries. There'd be the draper in the head of the boat, maybe, in the head of the floating shop, meal and a big weighing machine in the centre, and then the groceries in the stern and the salt fish and that. It was a big trade for the Orkney. I think it's Stromness or that place is Scatterflow, wherever they came from.
I love listening to stories of Stroma from my dad, far side as a kid. One in particular about the Diligent, my grandfather Patty, after the First World War and the scuttling of the German fleet in Scatterflow. They would go in after dark, a crew of them, and they would try and salvage the brass pipework and all the brass of these boats, which were semi-sunk, a lot of them, you could get quite good access to them. And it was quite lucrative. They would go in, they would fill the boat as much as they could, as much as they dared. Fair weather obviously, and they would make this back to the mainland eventually and sell it for profit. However, between the Second World War and the First World War, there was no boats allowed on the water in Scapa Flow at night. Now, as they were strictly not allowed to be, shall I use the word, salvaging this brass and copper off these boats, they would have to do this in the darkness of night, in pitch black actually. So they did this and they got on good and things went well. Until one particular night, they just loaded up the boat and they were starting to make out the flow. And next a huge spotlight lit up in front of them and the boat was just lit up, and it was a big British battleship lying at anchor and they were being watched. So all they could see was this light looking up away, and they were ordered alongside and to tie up. So there was Patty and I don't know, there was another 2 crew members, and they were taken on board the battleship and they marched directly on the bridge. So the captain asked them to explain themselves, and they duly did, and they were very apologetic, you know, and it would never happen again. And the captain made no facial expressions but stared at his second in command and just said, "Take them below, they'll be shot at dawn." So as you can imagine, my great-grandfather and his 2 companions, not a nice situation, and down they went below. Told me found it was a massive joke, and when they got in the galley everybody was laughing, and they got a cup of tea and a mug and went back up and met the skipper with a smile on his face, and it was basically, don't do that again, you know. So
when Mum and Aunt Amy, they headed onto the mainland to go to Wick one day. I'm not sure how old they were, but they were fairly young. So they were told to wait for the bus, probably at the smithy in Hoona. So the bus would come along at a certain time. So they headed into Wick, and they got the bus, and Mum always laughed because she said, well, there's no buses in Stroma, so they didn't really know what a bus was. Anyway, they caught the bus and they headed off into Wick. But they couldn't understand that all these people were passing each other on the street and not speaking, because in Stroma, you know, the close community that it was, everybody talked to each other and would have a yarn and a blather to each other and spend some time. But Mum was shocked at this, that nobody was speaking to one another.
We came home one day and met the Queen Mother and standing on the pier. She'd been ferried across with her fishing boat from Thurso, from Harrow Harbour, you know, it's below our castle there. She'd been ferried across, and her ladies in waiting. There's 2 fishermen with them from Stroma that had left and stayed in Thurso. They were there too. And Dan Wears and Malcolm Simpson. And Dan Wears said to us, he says, the only reason we're here is in case they steam through your creels when they're here. We want to make sure you keep clear of them, which is very nice of them. Like, you know, they've gone to the effort not to make any ill feeling. And she shook hands with us on the pier. I carried her picnic baskets up to the top of the hill, and they laid it out and had it there just above the pier, overlooking the harbour. We weren't invited to have the picnic, like, but we carried the baskets up for her. She asked us about staying on the island and that. She was very conversational. She was a lovely woman. He felt quite important, you know, with the royalty on the island, you know. I would say she was the most important person that I met on the pier, right? And I met a lot of people there too. Right?
In 1951, I'm pretty sure that was the year, the latest Stromness Scrabster ferry St Ola was on her maiden voyage from her shipyard in Aberdeen, I believe, to Stromness. That ship was the last conventional ferry on that route, before roll-on, roll-off ferries were introduced. Our house was not named Seaview for nothing, because it had a panoramic view of the East Pentland Firth from Cantic Head in Orkney to Dunkesby Head. The new Ola was dressed overall in flags and bunting, and sailed close to the east side of the island so that it might dodge the full force of the flood tide or show off the new ship to the islanders. However, when she hit the flood tide at the north end of the island, she listed over to port and was carried southeast towards the Pentland Skerries before she was able to limp into Scapa Flow along the west side of South Ronaldsay. That was a memorable sight for a 7-year-old.
She moved to the mainland, everything was by time. The post would come at a certain time, the buses would come at a certain time, but she said there was none of that in Stroma. everything was very relaxed.
The thing that I liked was if I had a digital camera and computer as I have now, I could have got quite a lot of really good shots of ships coming down and hitting the flood tide as they passed the lighthouse at Stroma. Spectacular, lying way on their sides. Before they got the head of the boat turned up around again, you know, they'd have drifted in 2 miles maybe. That would have been good, but we didn't have cameras and digitals then, you know.
And I remember sailing over one day, and in John O'Groats at that time, it was still the old harbour and old beach, and lots of people used to come down on a Sunday and used to have the open air missionary people singing. And I can remember the racket and the hum of cars and noise, and I remember getting over to Stroma, tying the boat up and walking up the hill. And I turned around and looked at John O'Groats, and there's nothing but flashing the lights with the sunshine. You could hear this buzz in the background. I turned my back on it, it was just paradise.
The inhabitants of the island were one large and extended family, and if you ask any Stroma-born person what he or she remembers most about the island, the same answer will be given, and I can assure you of that. We stuck together like glue.